Welcome to Beyond the Walls podcast. I'm your host, Kylie, and I am so excited to be able to have this conversation with you to help teach you tools, ideas, support on how to go beyond your walls too. Are you tired of feeling stuck and trapped and like a victim in your own life? Maybe you need to find a new way to look at it. Look at your situation from a different angle. Maybe we need to learn and take a look to see how we can re-choose or recreate a life that is going to bring you joy and purpose and feel free and exciting. So let's get started on today's message. Welcome back. I am really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today. You know, one of the things that I love so much about having guests on this podcast is being able to hear other people's journeys, the ways that they've overcome the walls in their life. And I think it just helps to create this space where we can remember that we're not alone, that it isn't the end, that we can somehow take our pain and use it for purpose, even if it means just bringing comfort to other people, and how to just overcome, to remind each other of the hope and the victory, and how to honor the struggle that we've been through to get beyond those walls. And so today I have the honor and the privilege to introduce to you Kerri Steele. She is the founder and executive director of Little Hearts of Hope. And I'm just going to hand it over to you, Kerri. I want to hear your story, what brought you up to this point. And then I would love to get into hearing and understanding what Little Hearts of Hope is. So welcome to the episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to let me share. I guess I will start. I'll start back in February of 2010. I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and my husband was 33. I was 31, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He was a super healthy guy. He ran 14 miles a day, led a prayer team all before he started his workday, rode his bike to work. He had no symptoms except for a lump in his neck. It came as quite a surprise. So the doctors at that point, it was a very rare cancer that they discovered, and they gave him 6 months to live. By the grace of God, he lived for almost 3 years with terminal cancer. He went home to be with the Lord on Christmas Eve of 2012. And so during that time, we were fortunate enough to be able to put our kids into therapy. We did play therapy because they were very young. And it was very helpful for them to learn how to understand what was going on, learn some healthy coping skills to process what was going on. What it didn't do was help me know how to help my kids when we were doing bath time or prayer time at night or breakfast in the morning before we were trying to rush out the door to school and they had some question. There was a lack of resources for me to know how to help my kids. So fast forward to a year after the passing of Will, and I didn't know what to do. I had been a stay-at-home mom, and so I really felt like I needed to spend some time with the Lord to get some direction. So I sent my kids to my parents' house for a week. And I spent a week praying and fasting, asking God to give me direction on how to provide for my family and how to be the not just the provider, but the leader of my family. And it was during that time that this was one of the things that the Lord brought to my mind and my heart. And never having worked in the nonprofit sector or opened my own business, I really thought that the Lord was giving me this vision to give to another nonprofit that already worked in the cancer field. And so that's what I did. We would love for you to run that program. And I was like, oh, that's unexpected. I actually was just like giving it to you. I had no expectation. Thank you very much, but I think I'm going to pass. I need a real job with medical benefits and all of this stuff. I need some financial security. And I think I need a desk job. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the founder of that particular organization said, I'm going to ask you to spend 2 weeks praying about that before you give me an answer. And I really
Wow.
wrestled with the Lord, believing He gave me this vision for this program and seeing that it was definitely something that somebody else saw value in. I decided to go ahead and give it a try because
Okay.
I wanted to follow the Lord's direction. And I also felt like it's just a job. If this doesn't work out, then I'll find another job. And
Yeah.
so started working with them. After a couple months, they said, listen, we really think that this needs to be its own nonprofit. This is going to be much bigger than I think you are anticipating. And I don't think that we can be the umbrella with which you were under. I think you need to step out on your own. We'll help you. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's a hard no. That's absolutely not going to happen. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know what I'm doing. And I hate
Yeah.
asking people for money. So I don't think I'm built for nonprofit.
Talk
um,
about some walls, right?
oh my
Like,
goodness. And he goes, well, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you 3 months ago. You should go pray about that. And I did, and I spent another 2 weeks wrestling with the Lord, and it boiled down to the worst thing that I could have imagined happening had already happened, and the Lord had been really
mm,
faithful to see me through it and provide for all of our needs above and beyond what I could have imagined or needed or asked for. Even though it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, I could see God's hand on our life quite clearly. And
yeah.
so I came to the same point. Okay, Lord, I'll step off this cliff. I will start a nonprofit. Kids to take care
Yeah.
of, to feed, to house, to clothe. If I can't pay my bills, I'm going to have to walk away. I will do this as long as you allow me to make enough money to pay my bills. 10 years ago. So faithful in providing funding and the right people to teach me the right skills, and it's been a very steep learning curve, but it has been so rewarding and so fulfilling and so faith building for me to get to work in an environment where the I get to see beauty from the ashes. I get to work with people on a daily basis that have a desire to give, whether it's their time or their energy or their skills or their money. I'm surrounded by giving people all day, every day, and it's so beautiful. Um, and and helping others and mourning with those who mourn and rejoicing with those who rejoice, that's a calling on everybody's life. And so I
Yeah.
get to do that every single day, and it's crazy
Yeah.
to me that I even thought for a minute, I don't want to do this, or I'm not equipped to do this. It's
Yeah.
not me, it's God, and I get to see Him at work on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
it's the most exciting thing I could have ever imagined doing, and I get to do it every
Yeah.
single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is such an exciting journey of faith. And I think that's my favorite scripture that you referenced, which was Ephesians 3:20, that God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine.
Mhm.
You know, and I think just seeing that, what you've done with it, every step of the way, really honestly, it sounds like what you've been willing to do is every wall that's come your way, every like, what is this? I'm scared. Are we gonna shrink back in fear, or am I gonna go out in faith? And being able to look at it and just say, what is possible, right? Like, what if it's not my way but yours? Like, what would be even better and crazier than I can imagine or ask
Yes.
somehow, right? And it sounds like, I think all of us can relate, even if we haven't had that exact, just the loss of the husband and the situation that you found yourself in, and then needing to provide for your family at the root. And I think that's what I love so much about people sharing their stories, is that it's not so much in the circumstances that make us relatable, because I can come alongside you even though I haven't had those same circumstances happen, but still that the facing up against, what am I going to do in this face, in this wall that's in front of me? what is bigger than me? Like, what could happen? And then are we going to choose to go out on faith, or are we going to shrink back and hide? And I think it's such a beautiful just testimony of being able to lean into the struggle. Right? Like, I'm sure, I mean, that was a pretty quick glaze over all of it. I'm sure that there were so many hard days. But then we get to have those moments of like the ways to celebrate, that make it all worth it. That's like, okay, I'm not just, it's not for nothing. Um, one thing I was thinking about is when you look back, I'm curious if you can see how maybe like your whole life has been preparing you to be in a position where you could lead a nonprofit and start your own business and be in this role. You know what I mean? Like some of the character or the talents and the natural skills that you have that align with this work, that wasn't because you lost your husband, but through that you were able to use your talents. Does that question make sense?
It
Like,
does.
what was before Will that you're like, wow, I've been being prepared my whole life for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I'm a very organized person, and I have a very high capacity for
Mm,
working. I can work 12 to 16 hours a day and multitask, in between running errands, in between meetings and that kind of stuff. I know that a lot of people don't function that way. And so I
yeah,
do know that the capacity and the organizational skills that God created in me, not
yeah,
just were helpful or what I needed to do this work, but also to be a single mom, being able to
yeah,
juggle three different kids' schedules, plus all of the housework, plus opening a new business. There's a lot to juggle. And I got made fun of a lot as a kid. I wasn't really like most of my family. And just remember people making fun of me for being so organized and calling me OCD, even though I don't think I have that. I think I function really well, and I know how to organize things really well. And so it's a skill set that I have had, and that I truly believe God knew I was going to need for the life that He was calling me to,
yeah,
and it has
yeah.
suited me well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, because I think it's in those moments that we can feel secure, that then you're not stuck like, oh, I'm now been forced into this position, as opposed to how have I been prepared? Not that you ever asked for it, or they're not punishments, they're not outcomes, or you know what I mean? Like, it's not being done to us, but how can I use what I've been given to now handle whatever circumstance I'm in now? And I'm glad that you kind of alluded to it a little bit in there, because I think sometimes what can happen when we share our stories is to then start like comparing and competing and shaming ourselves. So like to the woman wasn't her skill set to be organized and multitasking and like the go-getter that you are, right? Their story would look so completely different than yours. And I think there's not shame in that. It's not a competition, but it's, did you answer the call of what you were prepared to do? What are you being called to do? Were you faithful to go do that? So I'm glad that you kind of even alluded to that.
Yeah, well, I would love to just add on to that just a little bit. And that, number one, I don't have all the skills. That is one of the things that I learned very quickly. And it was finding the people who did have the skills and who had the same
Mm,
passion for what I did. It was getting counsel
yeah,
from other leaders in the nonprofit world and in the cancer community to help me learn what I didn't know that I didn't know,
yeah,
and to really rely heavily on the skills that other people have that I don't have. I can't do it all.
yeah,
And so we have to surround
yeah,
ourselves with people. God gives everybody different gifts. Mine happens to be organization. Somebody else's is something else. Um,
yeah,
but we have to work together. We can't take it
yeah,
all on. And then
yeah.
secondly, what I would love to add is just having a willingness to learn, I think,
Hmm.
is really the foundation of how we can go anywhere in life. Loving to
Yeah.
learn, knowing how to learn, and the willingness to put in the work is kind of,
Yeah.
it's just part of it.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for adding those.
Yeah.
It makes me think too, even in this situation, I would imagine, even just giving room and probably the need that much more for the support as a mom. You have three kids. Like we know, like all of our kids are so different. So even how you're going to process the passing of Will and how each of your three children are going to handle it so differently and how each of them
Mhm.
have their skills, like, right, each of them, I bet you can see, like, they have a strength and a weakness
Absolutely.
that need tending to, right? And so I guess maybe if you want to speak a little bit to your guys' personal situation, and then, or if you have other stories of clients and people that you've worked with or supported to kind of speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah. So obviously, all three of my children are very, very different. They have different gifts, they have different weaknesses, they have different ways of learning. They developmentally were very different stages of development when Will was diagnosed, during his illness, and then when he passed. And so, one of the things that was, it was really quite difficult was that one kid would be having a developmental milestone where their brain was developing just a little bit more because of their age, and they were reprocessing their grief, which is very normal and healthy for kids to process their
Yes.
grief at every developmental milestone. So it was almost like every time one kid would come out of that grief cycle, another kid was going into
Mm,
it. And there was this constant flow of grief cycles between
yeah.
each of the kids and myself. And they all handled it
Mm,
differently and they all had different needs. And then of course I had my own as well, and trying to be there for them and juggle that. We had help with therapists to come in as well, and then also starting a business in the midst of it and trying
yeah.
um, to juggle all of that at the same time. It's overwhelming if you have just one of those things to deal with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, it speaks to how faithful God is to give you what you need for what He's called you to.
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
all of the time, God did not bring me to this place to leave me to see how well I can do on my own. That's not His heart.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so being able to rely on the Lord and to be able to have friends and family surround me that were the hands and feet of Jesus to me, really, because I couldn't do it all.
Yeah. What do you feel like, thinking about that? What were some of the things that you kind of were prepared to handle? There's some like obvious, like, oh, this is going to be hard. Um, I'm like, my eyes are wide open and I'm expecting it coming at me. To then, what was something that was like really surprising that you were caught off guard about? Like, what would be, some of those situations?
I think that because his illness lasted for a while, I had really walked into single parenting to some degree during that time. So I
Yeah.
knew I was the only one who could run the errands. I was the only one who could do the school stuff and the homework and the meal planning and the cooking and the cleaning. He was very, very, very ill, and he did do what he could when he could. But I think I walked into single parenting feeling like, okay, I've figured out how to do this to the best of my ability in relation to the tasks that needed to be done. There was also a level of anticipatory grief that goes on when somebody's sick for a very long time, and I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I have some grip as to what this is going to feel like.
Mm,
That was not true. The grief that comes
yeah.
after death was much greater than the anticipatory grief that I had been
Mm,
dealing with 9 months before his actual passing. when I knew that there was not going to be a physical healing here on earth. Um,
Mm.
so the grief that came after, and then how differently my children were going to grieve, was a shock.
Mm.
It was quite a shock
Yeah.
for me. I did not realize how many different ways grief could look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really hard to navigate for sure. Did your counseling, so you guys got counseling for your kids before he passed and then continued afterwards, or when did that kind of happen?
Yeah. So they told us he had 6 months to live. And I thought, well, we need to get into counseling right away so that we have somebody on board that they've already built trust and know how to communicate with. So they were in counseling within, I would say, 2 weeks of his diagnosis. And we did continue counseling for about 2 years after his passing on a regular basis. And that included play therapy. We tried music therapy to see if that was helpful. So my kids were very musically inclined. Their dad was very
Mhm.
musical. So I thought that might be a beautiful way for them to process grief in a way that would connect them to him.
Yeah.
And then we also did grief support groups. There was one, I think it's still around. It's called Journey of Hope, where they
Mm.
once a month you get dinner and the kids get together with other kids who have lost a parent or a sibling, and then the
Oh.
adults meet separately. And for my kids, it was nice for them to have other kids. They didn't have to explain what was going on. It was just kids who got it. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the healing process too. And why God has allowed us such an amazing capacity to use our own struggles to help other people. There's something healing
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I'm glad you kind of spoke to this as well, that almost like, you were talking about how there's the milestones that your kids were making, like developmental milestones. And then all of a sudden, right, like if we're onions, right, like there's the layers upon layers. And you're like, oh, I thought we dealt with all of this. And now this is, we're surprised again.
Mm.
Um, and so I wonder, even for you, then, even then on this journey where now you're working in it all the time, like you're surrounded by it, you keep sharing your story over and over again. Like, what would be some of the, like, either surprising moments or just a few that kind of come to mind, some of those milestones for you then going through all of those stages? Because it's now been, 10 plus years. What have been kind of some of those hiccups along the way, or the moments of needing to grieve again?
Yeah, I think one of the things that surprised me the most was because of the ages of my children, there was a lack of understanding the permanence of death. And so we would have
Mm.
conversations where they would say, is dad coming back? Or I think I saw dad at Target, or something like that. And we had to keep
Yeah.
revisiting, this is what death looks like. And in light of, he is alive in heaven, he's with his creator.
Yeah.
It was very confusing for kids and very hard to talk to them about, because if he's alive, then
Yeah.
why isn't he here? Because he could be
Yeah.
here if he's alive. So what is death if he's died but he's alive somewhere else? They couldn't understand that. And that was a really
Yeah.
hard thing to navigate with the
Yeah.
kids. And then you have the milestones
Yeah.
like the graduations and the sweet 16s and the driver's license. And there was an episode, one of my daughters, her friend said to her, after her dog died, now I know how you feel because my dog died this weekend. And even in
Yeah.
her young age, she
Mhm.
thought, that's not the same. That's not the
Yeah.
same. And that doesn't feel good. but she didn't know how to process that. She didn't know how to talk about that. And
Yeah.
I got a phone call from the school counselor that there was an incident at school and I needed to come pick my girl up. So those kinds of things were like, oh my goodness, we really need help in educating the people around us, with teachers, with grandparents. Like, they're afraid to say something. They don't want to say something that you don't want
Yeah.
them to share. They don't want to bring stuff up and then have to deal with the emotional outburst. Um,
Yeah.
People also have a hard time um, contemplating their own mortality, and so they tend to avoid it. Well, when you have kids who are contemplating it and don't understand it, they have a lot of questions and they want to talk about it a lot. And that's really hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah. What has been something that's helped you most then? Because I imagine then you're trying to be strong for them in the moment, but then in the quiet spaces, then you have to then wrestle that same thing with yourself to really be healing you. What do you feel like has been helpful for you or has been the most challenging part of that?
I think I started off feeling like I needed to be really strong in front of my kids. I
Mm,
needed to have everything together. And a couple of years in, one of my kids asked me, "Do you miss dad? I've never seen
mm,
you cry about dad." And I cry almost every night. And I
wow.
was like, "So do I. I just do it in my room after y'all have gone to sleep." And this sweet
Yeah.
little baby said to me, and baby, they were babies, they were a little older, but said,
Still are babies.
yes, yes. Said, "I wish I saw you as sad as
Mm,
I feel, because it would make me feel like
mm,
my sadness was okay and normal, like a ton of
yeah.
bricks."
Mm,
But I was
wow.
afraid to grieve in front of them
Yeah.
because I felt like I couldn't take care of them if I was in my own mess. And so that was
Yeah.
something that I really had to bring to the Lord and show me a balance.
Yeah.
Show me how to do this, because I don't know how to do it. I thought I was doing it right, but clearly there was some
Yeah.
missing pieces.
Yeah. Well, and then I imagine then you had to face just then the uncomfortability and the fear of what it would be like. Then are you sharing too much? Like, how do you, yeah, it's just that constant balance, I'm sure, of like what worked and what didn't work. And I'm sure I would imagine what worked one time doesn't always, it's not a magic cure, right? Like, it's not just because it worked last year, we're different people now. Like we've matured in different ways. We have new weaknesses and new strengths. So I imagine it just constantly feels like there is no arrival. I would imagine. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, well, not just what worked this year doesn't work next year. What works with one kid doesn't work with another kid.
Mm,
And so it was really tuning
wow.
into what each kid needed, how they
Yeah.
how they processed, what their love languages were, how they needed me to show up for them in the
Yeah.
midst of my own grief. It's
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are your kids now? For those of us that
Uh,
can't do the mental math.
yeah, so my youngest is 17 and he's a senior in high school. And my middle daughter is 19, and my oldest daughter will be 21 on Christmas Day. So just a couple months,
Wow.
she'll be 21.
Yeah. Wow. It's making me think, if you're comfortable to share, what's something that you guys have done to sort of like honor the milestones of Will, where you're talking about all these things that now, like, it's almost like every time there is this exciting thing that we're celebrating, there's also this sadness in the background, like what's something that you guys as a family have done or handled it, or the way you talk about it, or is there something special you do to kind of honor that moment or give the space for the joy and the grief?
Yeah, the holidays can be very bittersweet for us because he had gone into a coma right before Thanksgiving, and we knew that that was sort of the beginning of the end. And then he passed away on Christmas Eve. So my kids call fall their grief season, and we
Mm,
even lost one of our puppies a couple years ago on his birthday, which happens right before Thanksgiving too. Um,
wow.
so there's a lot of loss between October 25th and December 25th for my kiddos
Yeah.
and for myself. Um, we tried lots of different ways to handle it. And some things worked and some things didn't. The first
Yeah.
couple of years, we tried on his birthday to go to his favorite restaurant. Well,
Mm,
two of my kids loved that. One of my kids hated it and
mm,
dreaded doing it. So we found other ways to celebrate by doing stuff at home so that they could feel like we were still remembering him and the fun times, but doing it in the privacy of our home so that if there was
yeah.
that big grief wave, we could do it in private instead of being afraid of it happening in
Yeah.
public. Um,
Yeah.
we released those Chinese lanterns one year. And
Mm,
while we were doing it, I thought, this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done because I'm looking at these floating lanterns with fire on the inside floating up, thinking, is this going to catch fire? Is this going to hit a power line? Is this going to, get stuck in a tree? Um, it seemed like a really beautiful thing and the kids were super excited about it and we did it and I was like, this is not
so stressed.
this is not smart.
Yeah.
um, we did try and take a trip together during that season, because I wanted my kids to also, even though that bad memory was not something I could take away, Christmas is always going to be a very mixed bag, especially for my daughter who was born on Christmas Day. So her dad died on
Oh,
Christmas Eve. Her birthday is Christmas Day. Um, I just thought I need to build some really happy memories into that as well. I can't take away the
yeah.
pain, but it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be all pain. And so
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to have fun and do things that we enjoy and create memories together as a family, where we are
Yeah.
playing together, was a really important thing for me to do to create some balance in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I hear a lot from people that have been in those kind of situations of just there's almost like the survivor's guilt or like there's just that confusion of like how can we be happy again, and there's so much pressure, right? Like to either if you're going to still be alive then make the most of every opportunity, like maybe just pressure is a good word. I don't know what word you would use for it, but between guilt or pressure or we're not good enough or undeserving, like man, like just how challenging it is to still find joy in the moment and still be able to live life and have fun.
Yeah, I think it's the reminder that I was constantly giving myself and my kids is that um, dad does not want you to be sad and depressed for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Everything he did was to help you have a life that you enjoy and that you love and filled with joy. And so
Yeah.
we're honoring him when we laugh and when we play and when we do the things
Mm,
that fills up ourselves. It really is a way to honor your father. And yes,
yeah.
there's grief. And yes, it's complicated. We can't take one away to have the other. You now have to walk with both. And
Yeah.
at some point, everyone does. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
you have to do it for most of your life and at a very young age. But that is something that's going to be with you forever. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's just
Yeah.
normalize it. Let's accept it. And let's build space in those things to allow us to be sad when we have those feelings, to be able to talk about it in a safe place with safe people. But let's not stop living. because that's the
Yeah.
last thing your child
Yeah.
would want.
Yeah. So I imagine that might be a great segue to tell us more about the Little Hearts of Hope. Like how did it begin? So just for clarification, was it a branch from the organization you were working with originally, or was it kind of just your vision originally, or how did it kind of start? And then what do you guys do? Tell us about what you actually do.
Yeah, so this was the vision that I had in that week of praying and fasting, that I thought I would just give to that other nonprofit. And they were like, you need to run with this. Um, so what it is a package program, sort of like those subscription services where you pay and you get a package every month. This is free for our families, though. We do not charge our families anything to be a part of this. We are funded by fundraisers and donors and grants. And so each package focuses on a different emotion that is common for kids who are watching a medical crisis in their home. We deal with things like false guilt, abandonment, loneliness, anger, jealousy. Those are some of the feelings that people are surprised that a kid is experiencing. In particularly, kids are really good at holding it in. You don't know that they're having a problem while they're having the problem until there is space built in for them to ask questions or talk about it. Um, so the idea behind this was, let's give these families everything they need to do these activities. So one is based in play, one is based in art. We're not actually therapists. What we're doing is teaching healthy coping skills. So when you are feeling angry, where are you feeling it? Let's talk about where that is in your body so that you can develop the emotional intelligence to be able to communicate that to the adult that you're near, that can help you, give you space to talk about it or deal with it. Anger in particular has a real physical outlet it has an energy to it that you have to release. So what are some ways we can do that in a healthy way? And so we send these kits, we send instructions for the activities, all of the materials they need for the activities once a month for a year. So it's 12 packages. And then because we are a faith-based organization, in those packages, we include a parent letter. And that parent letter includes sort of a story of how God walked my family through that particular emotion. And then all of the scripture verses that talk about that emotion from the Word of God.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super important to filter our emotions, which are a gift from God, through scripture to know how to handle them properly. And so the parents can choose how much they share with their kids. But at the end of the program, we send them a Bible with all of the verses highlighted and just tell them, dig in the Word of God. If you have a question, if you're confused, if you're sad, if you're angry, like the Word of God has everything you need to know that He loves you, He is with you, you're not alone. This is a normal thing that lots of people have felt for all of time. And then we have a prayer team that meets once a month, and we pray those scriptures over the families. Some of them send us prayer requests throughout the month, and that's the program in a gist. We've just added creative writing to our program to be able to include some of the older kids and even the caregivers and cancer patients themselves to write their own stories out and to share nuggets of hope and encouragement to other people who are fighting and or watching a loved one fight. And we're going to create a newsletter. We're going to be able to just share stories of hope and encouragement with one another through the creative writing. And then our last branch is our Christmas. We call it Hugs for the Holidays. We send gifts to the kids for Christmas. We're hoping to be able to expand that to include some financial help for families to buy their own gifts and take just some of the financial pressure off with having a meal and being able to order in food if they just don't have the energy to bake it or make it, or the immune system is too low and they can't go be with family during the holidays. So we're trying to grow that part of our program because
Yeah.
we spent a lot of holidays in the hospital eating takeout
Mm,
because that's where we were
yeah.
at.
Yeah. So this can be for families even like before they've lost somebody. Is it just at the point of diagnosis that I guess like who would
Correct.
be your ideal family and age group?
Yeah. So for the packages, our Hope packages, those are focused on 4 to 14. So elementary and middle school kids.
Yeah.
Um, we would love to be able to reach families early on in the diagnosis process, just so that parents have some idea of the things that their family's going to encounter, experience. They can have those conversations before they're in the throes of it and don't know how to handle it. So, this program is
Yeah.
for families while they are fighting cancer, and for families who have survived cancer but are on the other side of treatment. Sometimes when you get out of that survival mode,
Mm,
that's when all those emotions really come out. And so we work
yeah.
with families who are in remission but have recently gone through a treatment plan for cancer as well. um, we
Yeah.
don't, while some of our stuff does help with anticipatory grief, we're not a grief support group. And so we have groups that we send our families to if the loved one has passed away.
Are most of your clients, or the people that receive your packages, are they usually local, or how did they find you? Who have you kind of worked with, where that they can even know that you're there?
Yeah. So because my husband's cancer was a pediatric cancer, which is, it was rare and pediatric, and he was a grown man, none of it made any sense. But
Wow.
I reached out when I first was going to launch the program to the other families that I was connected with through
Yeah.
that cancer journey and said, would you guys be my beta testers? Basically, will you tell me if this is helpful and give me some
Yeah.
feedback? And from that point on, they just shared it with other people that they met who were fighting cancer, with their oncologists and their infusion clinics. We haven't actually marketed our program at all.
Wow.
We are in 38 states, which is
Wow.
possible because of the way we do our program, which is mailing it for the families to work on
Yeah.
together. So we're in 38 states, and we are we're based here in Frisco, Texas. My office is in McKinney, Texas, and we really would love to grow our ability to serve more families in our community. But
Yeah.
we're everywhere. We can be anywhere within the United States.
Yeah. That is amazing to be able to just reach that many people, whoever needs it, and to not be limited by that, right? Do you have volunteers that help like stuff these envelopes and mail them? Like, are there volunteer opportunities for people that
Yeah,
live close by that they could
there
help?
are. Yes, we have packing parties about once a month. It changes a little bit around the holidays. We try and set aside time in the holidays for our board and our volunteers to spend time with their own families. But like the first 7, 8 months of the year, about once a month, we have a packing party where
Okay.
we will do supply drives. That's another way people can get involved, is to collect supplies
Mhm.
for us. Um, in particular, around the holidays, you can sponsor a child instead of giving a gift to someone, maybe somebody who has everything. We send them a certificate and let them know. Or you can have, for your, instead of a white elephant for your family or your office party, you could collect a supply that we're in need of replenishing our stock. Um,
Mm,
so supply drives are great. They're great ways for kids to learn about volunteerism and how to give back. And we give service
yeah.
hours for that for kids who need
Oh,
them.
cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, packing parties, supply drives, and then our fundraising events, we always need volunteers to help us with setup and cleanup and serving and
Mm.
getting donations and sponsors to help us put the event together.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's stuff that people could do, whether they live close by or not. There's lots of ways to help out. How much would it cost to sponsor a child? And I guess that's a year, it's a whole year's worth. Like for someone, I'm thinking of like, especially my parents and my in-laws, right? Where they have everything they don't really need. And we think about like giving people events and opportunities and like an experience as opposed to just more gifts of stuff that we just don't really need. I think that's such a great idea to even gift it. Like if I sponsored my parents, like I did this for you in your name, you supported, and you're supporting this other family going through the situation. So great gift ideas, you guys. It's almost that time of year to start thinking about it.
It is.
How
Yeah,
much does it cost?
it's $40 a month. So because we send 13 packages, that is
Okay.
$520 a year if you want to sponsor a whole year for a child,
Yeah.
or just $40 a month for one package for one kid,
Yeah.
which is half the cost
Yeah.
of
And then
a therapy session.
honestly, yeah. How much do you have to spend extra for the gifts, or is that a whole nother volunteer arm where you're having corporations like sponsor money for gift purchasing? Would that, with your membership, would that include a gift at Christmas time?
Our Hugs for the Holidays program is a separate. The 520 for the year is just for the Hope packages. We do
Okay.
work with Build a Bear in getting donations from them, and then we have a beautiful group out in McKinney. It's called Our Savior Lutheran Church. They have a sewing club that makes clothes for the bears that we send
Oh,
with them. Isn't that a fun idea?
yeah. That's such a cute idea, though, to make the clothes and special, unique little gifts. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. Well, it goes to what we
I
were
love
talking about at the very beginning, where God gives everybody different gifts. I do not have the ability to sew Build-A-Bear clothes, but there's a whole
Yeah.
group of women who it is their joy to spend the year making little clothes for these bears that are going to go to these families. And they're praying over the kids that are going to be receiving it. They're using their gifts and their talents, and it brings them joy and they're blessing other people. It's just, I love how everybody can contribute in their own way.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the best way, right? Like, how do we use these stories when we share about our personal experiences to use it to spark our own purpose, right? And not in the competition of, or to feel like we have to go start this whole huge nonprofit, right? Like, we can still make a difference without it having to become this whole big, huge thing. Like, what's the little thing I'm going to do just to start in my own heart, in my own home, maybe to a neighbor, maybe to just one person, and not put the walls up, right? Where we limit ourselves to not being able to do more than we actually could because we shut ourselves off, right? Like we just close the door on ourselves just for fear. And I think it comes back into that, right? Where we just, how can we just choose to say yes, to be faithful and to not hold back in fear? And there's moments, right? Like I think you've even shared that a lot through this journey of like the healing isn't linear and grief is still going to come and it's allowed to look different for every one of us. And how do we just keep leading by example? It sounds like that's what you've done most with, especially for you and your kids. Like, I'm just going to learn along the way. We're going to try stuff. We don't have to do it again, right? Like, we don't, just because we started something doesn't mean we have to put it in cement and do it forever. We're allowed to
Yeah,
change the story.
yeah. I think I have two thoughts on that. One is just take the next right step. You don't have to have the whole
Mm,
journey planned out to start moving in the right
yeah.
direction. And then also, don't be afraid to fail. If you try
Yeah.
something and it doesn't work, you were faithful in what you thought you were supposed to do, and there's beauty in
Mm,
that. And then
yeah.
you learn something that either that doesn't work, and so you try something else, or that wasn't for me. But I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and I think God honors that desire in our heart to follow Him, and He is so faithful to
Yeah.
show us the way. He really is. If
Yeah.
we stop and
Yeah.
listen, He is so faithful.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And we don't have to know the end of the journey to be on the journey, just the next right step. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Well, Kerri, thank you so much for your time today. Any last, I think we covered it all. Any last either plugs for the program or just thoughts of encouragement to families that might be in this situation?
Yeah, thank you. I would love to just say we have 2 events coming up that we are looking for people to come attend, and also business sponsors to be a part of advertising through to our donors through our events. And that is Boots and Boogie at Gather in downtown McKinney on October 25th, and our
Okay.
Plant and Sip, which is at Grandion in Frisco on November 2nd. Details for both of those events are on our website, littleheartsofhope.org. You can go to the events tab of that page. If you are a family that is hearing about this and either you or someone you know could benefit from our program, there is a big old button right on our homepage that says get help. And it's a real short intake form. Fill that out. I'll give you a call. We'll talk about your needs, and I'll connect you with other resources and get your kiddos started in our program, hopefully the same month.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Well, and I'll put all of this information in my show notes as well, and links, and be looking out on Instagram. I'll post the events that are happening as well. So anybody that's listening and wants to definitely support such a beautiful program and organization to be able to just help bring hope to the littles and to the moms, right? Like, how do we just come along each other in the journey? We don't have to know what to do, but just do the right next step. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you so
so
much,
much.
Kerri.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. You're welcome. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that brought you a lot of encouragement and some information to be able to apply to your own life and to start taking down those walls that are in your way. What is that one thing that you want to take on and take with you today? I would love to hear from you and to hear about it. Follow me here on the podcast so that you're alerted and don't miss any upcoming episodes. You can find me on Instagram or even on my website at beyondthewallspodcast.com. If you want more help, I offer one-on-one coaching and would love to connect with you. Until next time, have a great day.